Welcome back to Prepare to Read. My name is Marcos, and I'm here with my good friend Jacob. And today we're going to be talking about Way of Kings, chapters 16 through 18. So, what do you think about this section, Jacob?
Well, I liked it. Like I said last episode, I think we're in the heart of the book now. Got a good idea of what's going on. We got our main conflict set up. I think I didn't love it as much as the last section. Lots of action in the last section, lots of new characters in the last section. We had a flashback here, which we can talk about later once we do their deep dives in, but it was good. I enjoyed it.
Cool. Yeah, a shift from the last episodes was I actually listened to these chapters instead of just reading summaries on them.
That's right.
So I think that helped me a lot with understanding some of the nuances and just remembering how much I really love this book. I think I might have liked it more than you, but we'll see as we get into the breakdowns.
Yes, sir.
Cool. So let's start with the first one, chapter 16, Cocoons. So in this chapter, we have the point of view of Kaladin again, and we are doing a flashback about 7 and 1/2 years ago, whatever the hell that means, to his hometown at Hearthstone. And in this flashback, we begin with Kaladin talking to his childhood crush, Laurel, about his father's plans for him to become a surgeon. And Laurel tells him follow his dream to become a soldier, win a shard blade for himself. And then we also meet Kaladin's little brother, Tien, who interrupts their conversation to give Kaladin a rock to make him feel better. From there, Tien and Kaladin start to hunt for some small creatures, and that's kind of where we start with this flashback. So, do you have any comments to kick us off?
I do. One, top of the chapter, we don't have a letter that is being sent between people in this chapter. Curious choice, is it because it's a flashback? Does that mean our letters are taking place in present time? Like when we're reading the actual chapters that are going on, which made me think about that. I think we can talk a little bit more at the end of this, but definitely made me think why put this flashback here and now. Like, we had a lot of momentum going in from the last couple of chapters, and then it's like flashback. And not that I disliked it or anything, it's just, I think I find myself thinking in movies and TV shows and books, things are told to you in a certain way for a certain reason. And while I was reading this chapter, I'm like, why now? And I couldn't quite get like, okay, that makes sense why we're learning about this now, about Kaladin. Like, we already knew he was a surgeon. We already knew where he kind of was based on like who he was fighting for in a way. That's the question. And then I will say, I don't necessarily know if, what did you call her? Laurel? Yeah. Is his crush, because like he does not pick up on the vibes that she's giving off. Like, I think he starts to like understand like, oh, I think she's pretty.
He talks about his
she's straight up
his teenage feelings.
Yeah, he does. yeah, his angst. But she's straight up telling him like he does not pick up on the hint of, oh, if you become a shard bearer, like we can get married. And he does not pick that up at all. So it's just interesting, the innocence that's still there, especially from like how jaded we've seen him now, where he's at. It's pretty cool.
I think this chapter mainly is here to kind of add a little bit more context to the next one. That's pretty much it. But like you said, we already knew he was a surgeon, so I don't really think we needed that. I do think there are some other important things like with Bright Lord Wistio.
Yeah.
And
Laurel's dad
dying and all of that. I think that has some big implications. But before I get into what I liked about the world building in this chapter, I wanted to talk about Tien. I don't care about Tien at all.
Whoa.
I think it's just me, maybe. I don't know. I just don't like when he's there. I feel like he's not really much of a character at this point, and he's just kind of like overly soft to me.
Well, he's also like what, 4 years old?
Oh, is he 4? Okay.
I'm pretty sure he's like,
hardened yet.
Kaladin's like I think was like 17 at this time, or 14 I think is right. I forget. I don't know if we know his exact age. And I think Tien's a pretty good, like he's little.
Okay.
Pretty
I don't
sure he's
remember him
little.
being that little. Maybe that would have changed my point of view of him. But yeah, he's not much of a character right now. He's just kind of like the side that I guess keeps Kaladin a bit grounded or gives him a reason to, I don't know, live or not be as sad as he would otherwise be. Because it's pretty inferred, I think, in this chapter that like Kaladin struggles with like depression. He's just like a little sad boy. And
He is.
yeah, like Tien, Laurel, those are like the people that bring him out of it. And so yeah, that's my main comment with Tien. But one of the world building things I did like was how they built up this idea of winning a shard plate and winning a shard blade can change your status entirely. I thought that's just...
Yeah, it's like the lottery.
Yeah, and they even describe it as like people will literally go to war just for the opportunity or the chance to gain that status from winning those things. So I really like that world building because I think it adds so much more weight to the shard plate and the shard blade. Instead of them just being like, this extra piece of equipment people have. Like, they really hold weight. Besides how powerful they are, they hold weight even in society. If you have that, you are like another level of a person. So.
Yeah, and it's also what are the chances of you getting one of those things?
Yeah.
You know, probably next to zero. And then on top of that, I actually wanted to ask you, or not ask you, but bring up, we've heard Kaladin talk about Tien, his brother, a lot, and I think it's pretty clear that he died at some point.
Are we told that?
I don't think we've heard him. I'm pretty sure. I think he's talked about that either I'm just inferring that, or at one point, because we did take our 4-month hiatus in between reading this stuff. So, but I'm pretty sure Tien's dead.
Me too, but I don't want to confirm that.
But Laurel, I don't think I've heard Kaladin talk about her, So I don't know if this is, hey, your dad's dead, we're getting a new lord, see ya, we'll never talk about you again,
I want to say
if,
something, but
this is gonna come.
I can't. But just from what we know, like you just said, Laurel's dad is dead. That's going to have some implications because they literally
100%.
say, he has no sons. She is, the next highest. So what are going to be the implications of that? And so her dad dying is a really big deal because even the other thing that happens that kind of has some political effects is all the money that the dad leaves for Kaladin to go to Kharbranth to become a surgeon. That's a whole other thing too, because I think he even mentions it's an insane amount of money that they left him to be able to go do that. Is that going to have implications? Because he's dead now. So how did he get that? There's things that can be brought up, especially wasn't there? Oh, well, it doesn't apply here, but in another chapter, I think it's Dalinar brings up the worst time, or the most.
Oh yeah, it's in chapter 18.
Yeah, the biggest time of turmoil is during a transition, when somebody's kid is going to take over. So that kind of reminds me of this: is things are going to be changing, and there can be a lot of things that get affected because of that.
Well, from what I understood, we can continue down the sequence of the chapter, but they're just sending a whole new lord down here. That's what it sounds like. That's what I understood out of it, and that again, my reference point is Game of Thrones for this type of stuff now. That she's dead, bro. She's out of here or she's getting married off. That's it. Those are the two things that are going to happen to her. In my reference point, I don't know if that's how Brandon Sanderson does things in this world, but that's just what I'm thinking. And like I said, he doesn't bring her up, at least that I can remember. And in the past when he was really down bad in the cage. Yeah. So I don't know. Interesting stuff.
Yeah. So, we talked about kind of the implications of the sharp plate and the sharp blade. Also, there are some implications for Sadeas. They talk about Sadeas and who he is and what he stands for. I think that's a really big kind of theme throughout the chapter is duty and honor, things like that. Because another really big thing that comes up is this whole, should he be a surgeon or should he be a soldier? And yeah, I think we kind of see that he ends up becoming a soldier. He also kind of ends up becoming a surgeon. but he struggles a lot with what am I going to be? Like, do I have to be the path set before me, or should I go and pursue what I want to be? And
right. And we obviously see that he becomes a soldier at one point. I guess it's not necessarily clear if he didn't go to train to be a surgeon. But it's like, okay, well then what happened with all that money?
Yeah.
You know, like that dude's fortune was left over, and if he didn't go, like, did he give it to his daughter? Did he like use it himself for other things?
Yeah.
Like, what's going on? I think it's interesting.
Yeah, the other major thing that happens, I don't care too much for the character, but I think there's some interesting things to discuss around it, is the fight with Jost. And that, I liked that interaction between Jost and like the group of friends for two reasons. One, it adds even more, I guess you could say, mysticism to the shard blades and shard plate. How even like the kids are talking, oh, my dad almost had one. You know, like the kids dream about.
Their dad works at Xbox.
Yeah. Kids dream about these things. Like they have a status within these cultures. And then also, I think they build a lot more on the idea that like Kaladin doesn't fit in. Like, he's a dark eyes, but he's not really looked at as lowly as other dark eyes. But he's not really.
Yeah, he's got some privilege.
Yeah, but he's not really a light eyes. Like, he sits in this really weird place.
Yeah, they've talked about it before. I want to say it with Shallan, maybe, or Kaladin. I can't remember. That there's like rings, almost like the system that's in. Yeah, there you go. Like, I think India has something similar, if I'm correct. Where it's like kind of hard to move up and down between those, and there's different treatment that you get being at each level. So like Kaladin doesn't have to go work the fields, but he's also not. Yeah, but he's also not royalty either, or a prince.
Well, so what that made me think of was he kind of reminded me a little bit of Jon Snow. In that, like, Jon Snow, he is a Snow, he's a bastard, but he's also a part of the Stark family. So he's not at their status, but he's also not at the typical bastard status. So he sits in the same spot of, like, who am I and who are my people? He's kind of like wondering.
You have
he's
nobody.
Lost. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So overall, though, this chapter, I did like it. I thought it had some really interesting things for adding to the scale of some of the concepts that we talk about, like the shard blades and plates. Overall, though, I think it was mainly just adding a little more meat to Kaladin and why he does what he does, some of his motives. But
well, we also, before you move on, we do learn about these little rocks that Tien is grabbing. And I don't know if these come up or not, but he does spend a decent amount of time talking about them and how they work, and how, like, you put water on the little monster thing and it, like, reveals its rock. And, you know, we get taught that. And again, I think a lot of times I find myself wondering, why are they telling us this? Is this going to come up again? So that was something that, like, stuck in me. And then Tien, like, again, he's a child.
Which I forgot
he's like,
before I started dragging him through the mud.
I know. He's insistent that these rocks are special, and Kaladin is just like, they're not, like, they're just rocks, man. They're just rocks. But if you've ever watched or read anything, like, when people start just like, oh, the dragons are never going to come back. It's like, oh, these dragons are going to come back, huh? Mm-hmm. Like, that's the vibe I'm getting with these rocks. It takes a lot of time to describe them. Yeah, so it's like, is this concept going to repeat itself eventually? You know, is this going to be a bigger thing than we think right now? It's hard because it's like, I know he likes to world build, so how much of this information is like the fun and games of it, of world building, and how much of it is, hey, this is integral to the story, so pay attention.
Yeah, and major plus to Sanderson in that he really did build, at least I think, I read a good amount of fantasy, I would say, a very unique world. Like, the way that he ties in, like, all these rocks and the gem hearts and the shard plates and the spheres. It's just very unique. And we kind of said last episode, it reminded us a bit more of, like, a sci-fi world. And it's interesting. You know, in your head you're not imagining your typical, forest and inn that you would for other fantasy. So I do appreciate that.
How do you handle, like, these things all look like lobsters? How do you handle that?
I just imagine
They're all crustaceans.
rocky creatures, I guess. But
Marcus is afraid of lobsters if nobody knows.
I think they're way scarier than spiders, but that's all I'll say.
Yeah. A lobster's not going to be under your couch or something.
You never know.
If they are, you have worse problems, I'm pretty sure.
Okay, so moving on.
But yeah. Oh, I do have something to, like, clarify here.
Okay.
I think it's explained, but maybe I just don't understand. What's is his dad's name Listern or whatever?
Kaladin's dad?
Liren.
Ooh,
who is Liren?
Good question. Let me remember.
Like, I can't tell if that's his dad or not, or, like, his dad's assistant, because he calls him father, but then refers to him in, like, narration
Liren.
as
I
Liren.
think Liren is his dad. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so it just got confusing because it's like Liren sat at the edge of the operating table. Mm-hmm. Father, Cal asked, "Why are you sitting in the dark?" Liren looked up. His face was somber, distant. Like, he doesn't, like, it's just, I don't know, it's interesting. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's just the way, like, the POV goes or whatever, but I got a little confused.
And they do build up the dad a little, and I think that's to kind of show just further connections to why Kaladin is the way he is. But another character that they mention is Dalinar. They also do bring him up as kind of like this hero of war. So all these people, Sadeas, Amaram, Dalinar, even Gavilar, are all mentioned as, like, heroes to these kids.
Yeah, they're the high princes, man. They're the high princes. And also, I mean, I think what we learn is... Oh, hold on, let me pull up the map. Or I did some map looking. And I think he borders Dalinar's...
In Hearthstone?
Like, place. I think. I might be wrong.
Let's see.
But he has so many
So
maps.
Hearthstone is a town on the eastern part of Sadeas' princedom.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Which, who knows where that is, I guess.
But it is interesting.
I did find where...
Talk about these different people that he hasn't met, knowing in the future where he is going to be. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Carbernath, where the...
Carburanth?
Carburanth is in the Frostlands, which is interesting, but we'll see if he ever goes there.
Okay, well, moving on. Chapter 17, A Bloody Red Sunset. So in this one, we're still with Kaladin in Sadeas' war camp. And we start the chapter with Kaladin visiting an apothecary to get some antiseptic and bandages. He learns how expensive things are in this economy that he's living in. And I think this was a really interesting interaction to me, how even the apothecary is like, bro, you're wasting your money on these guys. I'm like, why are you buying this stuff? They're just going to go out and die. And it's just kind of showing his resolve of like, no, I'm not going to just let these people die. And yeah, did you think anything of it, or he's just buying some stuff?
Well, I will tell you what I think my big thought of this section of chapters is, my big takeaway. And I'll tie it in with the little note that's at the beginning of this chapter. So if you look at what Dalinar is trying to do and who he is trying to become as a leader, that's what Kaladin's doing right now. Like, Kaladin is doing what the codes...
Yeah. What the Way of Kings
Dalinar is trying to... Yes. And then, so like he's living it, right? Dalinar's thinking about it, and he's seeing, like, hey, man, maybe we don't do these things. And he's trying to. I'm not shading him, but, like, Kaladin's doing it day in, day out. And then the little missive, right, at the beginning of chapter 17, it's like, might I be quite frank? Before you ask me why I was so concerned, it is for the following reason, : and I think, like, that colon is, like, what this chapter, and what do we see in this chapter? Like, we see Kaladin, like, being a leader of like men and willing to sacrifice everything for them. And
well, off what she said,
I don't know why that would be
Dalinar mentions one line from the Way of Kings, though, that like a leader should serve whoever he is leading. And Kaladin demonstrates that in this chapter very, very directly.
Very strongly. So it's just like I have a feeling that the people who are writing these notes are like maybe not omnipotent, but have a worldview and they can kind of see things that are going on. Like, are they gods? Maybe. I don't know. I don't know how this world works yet. And like, I don't know, the Way of Kings, I just feel like basically it's like, hey, someone's like following these practices, and does that mean that we get these like Knights Radiant thrown around? Like, is it because someone's following these things? Does this mean that it's a time for like them to come back? And if they come back, does that mean a desolation's coming? I'm just really curious why this little note at the beginning had the colon, as if like, hey, I'm concerned because this is going on.
Yeah.
No, I really admire what Kaladin's doing. I think he really is being a leader. And it's like, you could give this... What he's doing is... All right, I feel like Kaladin is an insert character where it's like, hey, you the reader, are you going to put yourself in his shoes? And like, you can very much learn things from him with the way that he's doing them. Like, he struggled. You've been with him in his struggles. He's becoming a leader. Like, if you wanted to be a good leader, like, do the things Kaladin's doing, and you're probably going to like instill loyalty in your men or women, whoever you're in charge of. So, well, I don't know. I really enjoyed this chapter.
Off what you're saying, this next section, I love this next section, is when Kaladin, like, they have to go on this bridge run. And while they're getting to the bridge, like, Kaladin's standing there, like, taking this serious, and how even like the soldiers walking by are like cheering him on and like making fun of him because they're like, bro, you're a bridgeman, like, what are you doing? But he's like, no, I'm gonna take this serious, which also, like you said, applies a lot to Dalinar's view, is like, you need to take your position seriously. But the one moment that I loved was when they're getting ready to pretty much start the run, and Kaladin takes Rock's position at the front. And that, to me, just like everything you said, that's like the leadership moment. Is like, and Kaladin, you get a little bit of what he's thinking through, and he's like, I have to do this. If these people are gonna listen to me, I have to show them, like, I will put myself first. And I love that moment. I think that moment like made the chapter for me. Also, I just like the idea of the bridge runs. I think they're really cool. This idea of like, you're running into fire. And yeah, so love that. Also, we meet Rock, which he has his signature saying, the airsick lowlander. He starts calling Kaladin that. And Rock is a whole other guy, because they also mention a very new type of person.
He's a horn eater.
Yeah, a horn eater. That's like a whole nother, like, he's described as this really big brute type of guy. So again, just adding more to the world building. But yeah, what did you think?
Well, specifically about the bridge runs, I enjoyed them. I think they were, I will say this, like, the bridge runs are dangerous, right? Like, we see like the guy running next to Kaladin dead. If he's gonna keep doing this, and maybe I need to let this go a little bit, like, I'm gonna need, he can't keep doing this and being okay. You know what I mean? Like, there's gonna have to be like something that happens to him, or we find out, hey, like, there was something more going on here. You know what I mean? Like, I get that he's gonna have the plot armor or something. Okay, but wait, like, it's just,
I can't comment on this. I can't comment. But all I will say,
don't ruin it.
Is read carefully. Okay, that's all I'll say. I can't tell you, but I get where you're coming from. But read carefully.
Yeah, because it's just like, you know, like, he's been doing this for a while, right? Like, and he was in the front, he survived the front, and it's not taken away from the story for me, but it's like, all right, like, I need I need something to explain or make it real that like he was been able to do all these runs and be okay. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know if that's already there. Like if that's it.
This scene kind of reminds me of.
Also, wait. I'm sorry, not to interrupt you because now you're making my wheels in my head spin. We got two times where this got called out, and it was with his I forget what they're called, the stones that like used it for currency. Mm-hmm. The shards, soul stones, whatever the hell they're called. The spheres, there you go. Nailed it. And each time he used them, the dude's like, yo, man, like, your shit's dull. Like, are you giving me fake spheres? And he's like, no. Like, I just got these. Like, they're real. And then he thinks, like, the first time when he's paying the apothecary, like, oh, Gaz, like, screwed me over, gave me some fake ones. And Gaz is like, nah, man, like, these are just out in the high storm. Like, these just got recharged. And it's like, okay, weird, you know? And then later on, I can't remember. I think it's when he's like bribing Gaz to let them take the wounded back. And Gaz is like, why are you giving me this like fake stuff? And Kaladin's like, well, you paid me with this. I'm giving you the one that you paid me. He's like, nah, man, these are like straight from the dude's, like, I guess Sadeas' treasury. Yeah. And it's just like, okay, what do we know about spheres? Well, I think if I remember correctly, like you can draw power from the spheres, right? Is that correct?
I'm just going to let you go here.
Well, anyways, I mean, something's happening there, right? Something's going on where like these spheres are being used in some capacity. Mm-hmm. How? No idea. But like it got brought up twice. And the second time was after a bridge run. So I don't know, you know, that's just stuff I'm noticing where I'm like, obviously that something's going on here. And would that make... Did we see someone? Zeth was drawing, it's power from like the lights and stuff like that. So I don't know if that's a different type of thing than like what Shallan and Yasna are going to do, like soul casting. I don't really know the magic yet too much, but...
Yeah, a lot of good stuff. We'll come back to that. But so definitely. From there, things move into... So this part kind of reminds me of like Hacksaw Ridge. Help me get one more.
Yeah, it does.
Where he's kind of running in and he's trying to fix these people up. And like you mentioned, the tone here is a lot more, I wouldn't say dark, but brutal than I remembered. Where they're just like, it's like D-Day. Yeah, there's people dying. One of the guys he's trying to heal dies. And yeah, he's just trying to treat as many people as he can, which leads into kind of the next leadership moment of this chapter, which is where they're like, Gaz isn't going to let you take them. If they can't walk, they don't come. And Kaladin tells Gaz, like, no, they're coming. I don't care. And kind of adds a little, not grayness to Kaladin, but when he's like, I will kill you if you do not let me take these people. And I will let them kill me for killing you. It just adds kind of a level of like, this guy's serious.
Yeah. And Gaz believed him enough to be like, all right,
yeah,
cool. Like, you do you, boo. Mm-hmm. But no, that was a good moment. Like, I feel like that where they start helping him is like the turning point of them believing him. You know what I mean? Like, okay, cool. Like, we think what you're doing is stupid, but also we value what you're doing. So, like, you stay here. I'm going to go look for the other two people. Or, like, he's trying to drag that one dude, and what's his name? Rook. Comes over and, like, is like, he helps him and stuff. So he's starting to have that buy-in, which is really cool to see. And every time I think about, like, when they're in the camp and stuff, I'm like, when are we going to... Have you seen Mulan?
Mulan? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm waiting for our, like, with all the strength of a raging... You know that little... Where they're training and stuff and, like, make a man out of you? Like, I'm just like, dude, that scene's going to come up here where he's, like, they're all training out in the lumber yard, holding their sticks.
This, I think, is awesome. I think Sanderson, this is like one of the parts where I think that he really is killing it. Is how he's taking Kaladin from like his depression zone to where you're thinking, how in the world is he going to get these people to follow him? And then we get this chapter where it's like, dang, dude. Like, if I was alongside this guy and he did this, it would be hard to not be like, dang, like, I should listen to this guy. You know, like, if he just wants me to get up and run, that's the least I can do for what he is doing for us. So he really is just like showing how he's becoming the leader of these people. And it's not in like a cheesy, weird way, but it really does seem organic that he's winning them over in a very honest way. And you said it really well, is like, it really is something that you could take out of this book, like what he is doing and the type of leader that he is being. And I can't remember very many books that have done that super well, where like there's a leader in a book that you like really buy, this guy is a good leader. They try to make Rand into one in Wheel of Time, and I don't really remember it being as solid as this one, I think.
And then Rand was very I don't know how to say it, like whiny at times, and I think it's hard to get behind, like as a reader, when someone's being whiny, like I don't know, it's just kind of like, all right, like, you know.
No, maybe one day we'll do an episode where we talk about just fantasy as a whole, but Stormlight to me is like the progression of fantasy. Like Rand had to happen so that Kaladin could happen, but yeah, just good stuff.
I think Kaladin does, now that you bring it up, he does remind me of Jon Snow. Like, Jon Snow does have very good leadership qualities. Mm-hmm. Like, I think his world is a lot more bleak, to where he was doing the right thing, but it was going to, like, I mean, he got killed for it, you know? Like, but he was willing to make those decisions and stand up for people who were like, no, man, like, this is what's important right now. And he had those people on his side, mm-hmm. you know? So I think he's a good comparison to Kaladin, where
it is similar,
and you can take away some of those things. I think my only, like, I still stand, I've said this before, so I won't talk on it too long. I wish we would have sat with Kaladin a little longer in like the mud and the shit.
You did for a while.
Yeah, but like, again, and I know that it's a different type of book where we have one POV, but like I think of Name of the Wind, and like I feel like I lived through that section with Quoth, of him just like when he finally got a little bit of a break, like damn near made me cry, mm-hmm. you know, like thank goodness something went right for this guy. Where Kaladin, it's like, yeah, like, you know, that was, his situations were dire, but it was like, I don't know, 75 pages, and then it's like, all right, cool, he's chosen not to kill himself, and like I said, like, it can't go much lower than that, so it's kind of like, I feel like I'm not worried about him getting worse, if that makes sense, because it's like, well, he was already at suicide, which, like, they show us this flashback, and it's like, obviously he struggled with depression of some kind, mm-hmm. even when he was younger, and it makes me question, like, well, what did he do to overcome it last time? Because he didn't seem that way when he was out in battle with those people, and we only get that one chapter of him, but he seemed very like full of purpose and stuff, and I don't know.
Yeah, we'll come back to it.
But yeah, I think Kaladin's living the way of kings, and I think other people are taking notice, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So moving on to chapter 18, High Prince of War, and this one's a pretty beefy one compared to the other ones. This one, we're back with Adolin and Dalinar. And when we start, we begin with Adolin. And Adolin is pretty much out. He has a girl with him that he's courting, but he's not really interested in, or doesn't seem interested in. And he's going around town kind of asking for expertise on what happened to this strap that was cut in the last chapter when Elhokar was out in the hunt. And from here, we find out pretty much that it's confirmed by the leatherworker that it was cut, but not so simple. They then throw in, like, it is possible, though, that it was cut by the buckle, not by, like, somebody purposely cutting it. So we get that.
Can I jump in here?
Yeah, go for it.
I didn't like that. I did not like that choice from Sanderson, because to me it creates like an artificial sense of tension, whereas like if they would have just said yes, it was cut, and it's just like, well, then you can let me figure out who in my head, and like I'm playing that game while I'm reading, like, oh, like, is it that? But then I feel like we got this answer that yes, it was cut like 2 chapters after it gets brought up, you know, like it's such a quickly solved, like, yeah, it was cut, and then it's like, oh shoot, and then it's like, but I mean, maybe it wasn't.
I don't think they
like,
leave you with that though, because Adolin immediately is like, nah, this was cut purposely. So they don't leave it there, where Adolin's like, yeah, I guess it was the buckle. Like, he immediately is like, nah, man, this was cut. And so they don't really leave you in that mindset.
You think I didn't take that away as like Adolin like that. I think he just thought like, man, like he's still like, I feel like he's still where he was at the previous chapter a little bit. But I don't know. But yeah, that's just my thought. Sorry, you can continue.
Yeah, so from there, the last thing that happens with Adolin is that he starts hearing this horn going off, which usually there's 3 horns, and whenever these horns go off, it's kind of like a indicator for the army in town to know how to respond or what to do. And Adolin, he's very like military minded, and he hears these horns, and he knows that there's a chasm fiend, because that's what these horns signal, near them that they would be able to reach first before Sadeas or the other high princes. And Adolin's ready to go. He's like, we need to go, we need to get this. And he realizes that Dalinar chooses not to seek it, which again is just kind of adding more to the whole Adolin's view of Dalinar's leadership. So,
and who else comments on it, or at least makes a face about it? His little chica.
Janala.
What's her name? Janala. So it's like, I mean, we're in a different world, I feel like, where it's like the gender roles are clearly defined here and how they treat one another. And it's like, like, your dad isn't letting you go fight, you know? Like, what are people going to think about that, man?
Well, they
know?
really
like,
drive home that Dalinar is not living up to the societal standard of what a high prince should be. Like, he very much 100%. Is going against what that is. And we see that throughout the chapter.
Yeah, and like we see, like I think we were pretty hard on Adolin of like, hey man, like maybe wisen up a little bit. But then you see like, oh shit, he's getting shit on by not just himself, you know, it's other people who are clearly making these comments to him. And yeah, like it is, yeah, it's a rough spot. It's a rough spot. It's one of those things where like, again, you're leaving yourself open for people to ask some dangerous questions, you know, like should this guy be in charge of stuff? And I think it's creeping into Adolin's head for sure.
Yeah, we'll come back to that because, like you said, there's some big implications that start to come up that tie into Dalinar's leadership style and how people view him. But before we get to that, the next thing that happens is we go over to Dalinar, who's working with several scribes to find ways to manipulate the other high princes into following Elhokar in truth. So I guess right here he's throwing around the whole that the high princes aren't entirely sold on following Elhokar. And I believe right here is when he brings up that whole, like, the most dangerous time in a king's rule is when, like, the sun is taking over. And it's because now they're no longer following, like, this figure, but now they feel like they are a kingdom themselves, so they want to steer the kingdom in the direction they want it to be. I think that was what he was saying. I don't have the chapter open right here. But from there, he's just kind of directing troops, where to send them, what to do with them. And then Renarin comes in to talk to Dalinar. And this is where Dalinar, kind of showing his softness towards Renarin, promises him that if we get a new suit of shard plate and a shard blade, I will give them to you. So that way you're able to pretty much live up to the standards that are set, especially him being the son of like one of these war hero type dudes. But yeah, and I think this also contrasts kind of to Kaladin's chapters, where they kind of are just so casual about the shard blade and shard blade. It's like, oh yeah, when we get another one, that one will go to you. You know, I've given a bunch of them to other people, and it's just showing how Dalinar is in such a different place than the other Dark Eyes that Kaladin grew up with. So,
You did slide over something, so I'm gonna read it. I don't know what it said in the summary, but here we go. Regardless, this is Dalinar. He'd be very glad for Yasna's return, if she ever decided to return. Some of his higher officers hinted to him that he should marry again, if only to have a woman who could be his primary scribe. They thought he rejected their suggestions because of love for his first wife. They didn't know that she was gone, vanished from his mind, a blank patch of fog in his memory. Though in a way, his officers were right. He hesitated to remarry because he hated the idea of replacing her. He'd have everything of his wife taken from him. All that remained was the whole, and filling it to gain a scribe seemed callous. So, like, we had kind of talked about, like, you know, he says, like, oh, I don't really remember Adolin's mom. And I thought, like, maybe it's because he was just, you know, a young prince, you know, messing around, partying and stuff. But it sounds like something else is going on. Like, either he's lost his memory of her due to these, like, episodes that he's having.
No comment.
There's something deeper in here. There's something deeper than I thought is going on, obviously. So, yeah, and he can't even, like, remember her, which is, like, wild. So now I'm like, well, who is Adolin's mom? And also, like, I don't know. I might just be grasping at straws here, but he described someone's hair at one point, and I was like, I'm pretty sure that was so-and-so's hair being described earlier. What's his face's childhood crush? I'll have to look at it, but I was like, I'm pretty sure. I was like, oh, isn't it? She had golden streaks in her otherwise black hair. Mm-hmm. And then we read, I mean, let me get this. Was it with Adolin? No. I got you. I'm sorry. She had streaks of blonde in her otherwise black Alethi hair. And this is Teshav. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Maybe that's a common thing for dark-eyed people. But I don't know. She had violet eyes, actually. She wasn't even a dark eye, so... Wait a minute. Hold on. I'm sorry. I'm doing some discovery here. No, her eyes were pale green. Okay. Maybe not the same person, but never mind. Anyways, yeah. So, like, I'm really curious why he forgot, how he forgot, and who she is. Because, like, is it connected to the High Storms? And if it's connected to the High Storms, why did he forget about her? You know, like, why? I need answers at this point.
Yeah. Great thinking. I would say just put a pin in it and just keep it in mind. I can't comment. So, but good stuff. Yeah, really interesting as far as, like, why doesn't he remember her? And it seems like he doesn't remember anything about her. He just knows that he has, like, this hole that she used to fill, but then he doesn't know anything past that. So, really interesting. Also, I believe another aspect of, like, the gender role thing, I think they look down at him when he's working with the scribes. They're like, what is he doing? That's not, you don't do that as a guy. So,
yeah, there is, like, it is interesting how defined the gender roles are here, and how I think not just that, but, like, they're different than I think stereotypically they are, you know.
He plays with everything, man.
And it's
gender
like,
roles, religion, cultures, social class.
Yeah. And I think we'll get into the religion aspect a little bit later. We get some world building on that. But I do want to talk about Renarin? How do they say it? Renarin. Bad name, also. Just another bad one. But he does seem to have taken what the wit told him to heart there, where he's like, you know what? I still call this guy boy. Like, I still think of him as a boy, and he's about to be 20.
It's kind of weird.
So that's when he does get the idea of, like, you know what? Maybe I will give him. And again, I think we can very see what Dalinar values, because he's like, well, I'll get this guy shard plate. You know? Like, but instead of, like, hey, like, maybe his strength isn't fighting, but, like, he can't, like, because Renarin kind of did a dismissive, like, oh, I'll be some lord of some small town. But instead of, like, well, maybe you could be the lord of a big town. You don't need to be a fighter to be like a good king, you know, even if that's the case. But like, he's not the first son, whatever. I know how that goes. But there's other things that he could be good at other than just being a shard bearer, you know. I don't know. I'm just assuming a lot on the world, but it's still like, I think it's progress, but he's still tied up with like, he knows combat, he knows war. That's what he knows, and he's kind of projecting that onto his son. But I think that's good. Like the son seemed to appreciate it, so good on him for progress.
Yeah. Cool. Well, from there we bounce back to Adolin, and he's still with his girl Janala, who leaves him because she's frustrated, and I don't think he really even notices. So they're kind of building up the Adolin's like all the girls want him, but he's not really interested in them type of archetype. But anyways, he starts talking with this priest named Kadash. He's an ardent of the church, I guess. And he talks to him about a couple of things. The first thing is he starts asking for his opinion on Dalinar's visions and asking, do you think they're something that should be considered, or is he just being crazy? Is there some type of like religious implication to these visions? And one thing I did like is that Kadash is kind of like, he tells him, but he also tells him like, dude, I know my place. I cannot make any big claims. I will tell you. And he kind of tells a story. He uses a story almost and kind of tells him like, take what you want from that. But he tells the story of the hierarchy. How do you say it? Hierarchy. When the church tried to take over the world, and priests claimed to have visions and prophecies, which were later revealed to be lies to manipulate people. So really interesting as far as the implication of Dalinar's visions and what Dalinar might do with these visions, because it seems like this had very big implications on the world and where things went. So for somebody to now come and be like, I'm having these visions and prophecies, probably would not pass over really well with the people anymore.
And I think it'd be really scary because he is so close to the king. You know, like him being in that position to influence the king, like we kind of see a little bit later where he's like, hey, maybe make me a high prince of war, wink, wink. And then he's having these visions, and now Adolin is receiving this information about like, hey, man, like we got some weirdos trying to be priests that could see stuff, and it did not work out well. Like, what divide is that going to cause between him and his son? And is he going to trust him? Like, is he going to trust those visions? And I think Adolin's not going to. I think he's going to see them as bad and like try to steer his father away from them. Are they good? I don't know, but they are making him question the way things are being done now. And I do agree with Dalinar with like the way they're going. There is no end in sight with the way they go, and we can get to that later. But I do think I am a little confused with the religious aspect of this stuff, because we learn about art. Like I almost need like a little glossary, or not glossary, but like index maybe, where it's like ardent. What does that mean in this world? Well, calling. What does that mean in this world?
An ardent is a Vorin priest, religious scholar or monk-like member of the Ardentia, who follow and teach the Vorin religion.
Well, we do know that also, because Jasna is Dalinar's sister, right? That's right.
I don't know. Yes?
Yeah, yes. I think that's right. We do know that Jasna, like, is a heretic.
Yeah, because she opposed the Vorin religion.
Mm-hmm. And what does she know that Dalinar, I have a feeling, is going to find out?
But that makes her interesting, because that means she probably wouldn't be as closed off to the idea of these visions and what they mean compared to other people.
Yeah, or she wouldn't see them as a
religious
heresy
type thing. She would probably see it more logical.
Yeah, or like scientifical, 100%. So like, I think of that and like, can we trust this guy that's feeding Adolin information? I don't know. Well, I don't know if he's just a side character that pops up.
I don't think we've had a chapter yet where Adolin really shines. Like, he hasn't had his moment just yet. But something I would say I like about Adolin is, well, he is very military minded it seems like he's a little bit open-minded, though, because he challenges Dalinar, but then Dalinar kind of shows him why he's wrong, and then he's kind of like, huh, okay. So he seems kind of like he's trying to also figure out what does he believe in and what does he stand for. So kind of similar to Kaladin then in that. Never mind. But anyways, ready to move on?
Well, hold on. I had some other thoughts. We learn about callings here too, and we learn that Adolin's calling...
Dueling.
Well, from what I understand of a calling is it's like... I think Catholic does it kind of, where it's like you pick your saint, like saint of whatever, saint of music, and then like, okay, cool, like how are you going to live your life in accordance to these, like, you know, your goal or whatever. And I know I'm not saying it's exactly like that, but that was my connection to it. And so it seems like everybody picks their calling, and Adolin's calling was dueling, and then within Warrenism, like you're supposed to work with these ardents to progress and I guess elevate within your calling. And they're kind of like, hey, Adolin, like you haven't been doing this. And he's torn between like, well, my dad, like, you know, the codes, you're not really supposed to be dueling while in war, but then also we're not really in fighting during war.
Yeah.
So like I can see like a conflict coming up here, and also like the building of the religion and Warrenism. That's
a good word to assign to Adolin, is I think he's kind of conflicted. He's conflicted on 100%. Does he follow Dalinar or does he follow the standards that the society has put around him?
I still think he doesn't see the big picture, you know? Because we'll get to this, but, you know, what they're doing isn't getting anywhere. Like, you've been here for 6 years, you know? And if you're going to be military-minded, I think at one point you need to recognize that and be like, okay, this isn't, like, we're just in a forever war. Is that good for, like, the kingdom? Is that good for our troops?
So
no. So, like, something needs to change.
So let's move into the next section then. There's a detail I'm going to leave out. I'm really curious if you're going to catch it. Okay. Anyways. So Dalinar visits Elhokar, who's the king, to make his reports for the day. And when they're there, there's some really interesting conversations. There's some hurtful things that are said. And Elhokar is shocked when Dalinar brings up the idea of ending the Vengeance Pact, which the Vengeance Pact is pretty much them declaring this pact for, like, we are going to avenge Gapilar, and we're going to kill the Proshendi, and that's just, it has to happen. And Dalinar realizes that, well, that's what he wants to achieve, because he points out a lot that this is getting us nowhere. This is just going to, like, people are just needlessly dying for no reason. Like, are we really accomplishing anything? He realizes he needs to take a different approach, because Elhokar, just like the other people, are kind of very closed off to that idea. So he says, we need to find a new approach, a new way to win this war. And that's where he brings up this idea of, Elhokar, why don't you assign me to become the High Prince of War? And Elhokar tells him he'll consider it, but some of the bigger implications of that were it had been brought up in the past and it was shot down because it was seen as kind of like a dictator-y type thing. But since they've been in this war for so long and all the High Princes are kind of dividing, they're no longer working together, Dalinar's bringing up this idea as like maybe now it would work if we have a united front. And he ties it into the whole, the thing that he keeps remembering, the unite them. And this is him kind of being like, okay, is this what that means? So, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know. So I agree that things need to change, right? And I think I'll get into it. I think what detail you're talking about a little bit later, because it is on my things to talk about. I don't know if that's a good idea, because it also, like, I think that gives a lot of people certain power over certain things, and I don't think everything is created equally. Like, yes, you need everything to function, but does, you know, controlling the army, like, I mean, that seems like you could just go wage war on somebody, you know, really quickly. So I don't know if that's necessarily the right answer, but it's what Dalinar knows can...
you got camera, Dana.
It's what Dalinar knows can, what's it called? Like, unite them. That's his experience. That's what he knows. He's going to go do it. On the other hand, like, I think leaving people in charge of like all the merchants or whatever other things is like, I still think that gives them a lot of power. And if you don't trust all of them, like some of the ones we've kind of singled out as like, hey, this guy's obviously up to some shady stuff. Like, do you really want them to have total control over one thing? You know? But I don't know.
And he is bringing up a very, like they're going to assassinate you kind of words. So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and he even talks a bit about how he's going to have to approach it, where he's saying like, I can't go immediately to certain people because of the way it would make them seem. So what I do like about this is it's adding some depth to the politics, I think, to where the politics, because I think one of the like best politics in books is like the Song of Ice and Fire books. Great politics. So I think this is getting more closer to those types of politics where things actually have consequence and implications. So I do like that.
Yeah. And he reminds me of like Ned Stark, where, you know, he's very upfront about like, this is not in my wheelhouse. Like, I can see it. I can see it. Like when he went to go try to be subtle with that one guy, it just like the guy knew what he was saying. I think it's going to shoot himself in the foot, to be honest. I don't think it's going to go the way he wants. I think he needs help. I think he needs someone who has that skill set. Maybe like the wit. Something is calling to me that it's like
someone with high charisma
wit that can. Yeah, or just like who. Dalinar is a man of honor who like. It's like the Ned Stark thing, you know, like you aren't going to be able to understand what other people are capable of if you don't think like them. And I don't know, man. Like, I walked away from this thinking like, I don't think that's a good idea. I think that's not going to be a good idea. Like, that's just how I feel. I don't think it's going to play out well.
That's cool though, because it adds some interesting bumps in the road instead of it just being everything's going the way he's planned.
Yeah. So, and it's just because like this is not like if you were to Dalinar would do great in the battle, but I don't know how he's going to do at court, you know, how he's going to do convincing everybody that this is the right
perfect
idea.
way to put it. Dalinar is very much like a war general, and now he's having to navigate court, and he's kind of like, shoot, how do I do this? But there was a couple of really good stabs at Dalinar with Elhokar, like where he tells him, what does he tell him? Darn, do you have it written down?
Well, where he tells him like, you didn't protect my dad, and you say you're gonna protect me.
That was a good one. I was like, dang, that's mean.
It almost felt like this was the first time that they had talked about that, you know?
Like it's a touchy topic. They don't bring it up.
Yeah, and it's like finally it was kind of like just straight up like, yeah, man, like you said you would protect my dad and you did it. And Dalinar's like, you're right. But then at the same point, Elhokar's like, yeah, see, like you would have challenged me before on that, but like you're okay with that. I think that's weakness. And it's like, whoa, like I think I see that as like, hey, you're taking ownership of your mistake, but then Elhokar is spitting back at him like, well, you know, I don't know if I like that. And it's like, that's weird, man. That's counterintuitive to what I think would be like the right thing to do.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I will say I have two things pointed out that I think might be your
I won't tell you if it is or not. Unless you want me
to. Okay. I mean, you can, but I was going to talk about one of them anyways. There's a guard that kind of High Prince Ruthar wanted to see the king. I don't know what's going on with that guy, but he did get brought up twice, and he didn't like Dalinar. And I don't know if it was just jealousy because he could see the king very well or not. But
yeah, they do mention that, where people don't like how he's able to just go in and see the king whenever he wants. Yeah, it says right here, Ruthar was waiting to see the king and was annoyed that Dalinar had constant access to him, yet he had to wait.
Yeah. And then the second thing that I wanted to bring up anyways, and I think is what you were talking about, is this clothing issue that we're having. I don't know if that's what you're talking about, but like it's been brought up several times about the clothes that we're wearing, and it seems like the new school thing is like the silk and the like,
which is like what Sadeas wears.
I don't know. Yeah, and like the puffy stuff, collars and all that stuff, and Dalinar is very like traditional, not traditional because I don't think that's a very like smooth, tight fitting. It feels like buttoned up stuff that's like very plain. And he sees Elhokar starting to he's still got like some of the traditional stuff, but he sees the new wave going on, and Dalinar literally says, sounds a little weird, but he's like, this is what Gavilar foresaw. This is why he grew up so this is why he grew so insistent that we follow the codes. And it's kind of like, you're talking about clothes, and like you think that's what Gavilar's dying wish was to like make sure we get the right clothes on, but like what more is going on there with those things? Because like if you remember Adolin's chica Janala, she is like, hey, you know what, talk to your dad, like we need to change these clothes over. Like, why is it such a big deal? It's got to be important, right? But
well, you missed it.
I don't know if you have any.
So no comment. I won't comment on it. If you want to go back and dig for it, it's connecting some dots that if you can connect them, it's interesting. But anyways, so
yeah, I might reread it then.
It's just like one sentence. If you want to read a whole hour and a half chapter, find it. So
I will.
This next part, it's pretty simple, but I think I want to hear your theories on what's going to happen next. So Dalinar, they meet over in Narin. There's a high storm coming. They run to find shelter. It's kind of a little tense because of the whole thing with Dalinar has these episodes during the high storm. And the chapter ends right as the high storm hits. So the implication is Dalinar is going to have one of these episodes. So the last question I want to leave you with would probably be, what do you think that is? What are these episodes? What happens? What do they mean?
Well, everybody seems to know about them, right? And it doesn't seem like something Dalinar would be going around and talking about.
Let me add one last thing. So the next chapter title is Starfalls. I don't know if that adds anything to your theory, but...
No. Well, like a couple things. Because I've been thinking a lot of like, damn, everybody knows about these things. And like I said, Dalinar doesn't seem the guy to be just spreading stuff. Like, I'm having weird dreams, man. So they're going to be very loud, I guess, very out there. I would say like huge, like bombastic type stuff. Right? And I don't know if it's like he's going to start saying some outlandish stuff or if he starts like repeating what he's seen. And what I think is going to happen, right, is like, well, he didn't get to his like private area. I think some other people are going to see what's going on, and I think it's going to eventually like, hey, like this guy isn't fit to be in charge of anybody right now. Like, I think that's what's going to happen is, yeah, this guy's crazy. Like, I saw him do this stuff. Like,
yeah, because
we need somebody else in charge.
They do a good job at illustrating that, like, it's a very private thing that these episodes are happening. They don't want people.
Yeah, they don't want anybody to see it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I mean, I think it's going to lose him respect. Eventually, is what's going to happen with this. Is it's going to be public. People, the wrong people are going to see, and it's going to be used against him, and he's going to. Like, I don't think that High Prince of War stuff, I don't think that's coming around. And it might, but it might not be Dalinar, Like, that's just... That's what I foresee coming. Like,
there's kind of I think there's two aspects to think about the visions. One is, I think, the political implications, which I think ties back into the story with the Ardent, of, like, the visions, the priests take over the world, manipulate people, all of that. And then what the visions actually are. So what do you think the visions actually are?
Well, they do talk about the true desolation and stuff like that. So I think that's what they're about.
So you think they're going to be future visions? Visions of the future?
Well, it's a tough question because I feel like these things are always about being a circle, the time-wise. So it's like, is the future really the future? Is it the past? But like it's repeated. I would say, yeah. I think the most safe, not safest bet, but like the one that I can wrap my head around without further context is yes, these desolations, which are obviously cycle, but this next cycles to pass is going to be the true one, because they think, right, everybody thinks that we stopped it. That was how the prelude ends. We're like, hey, we'll let everybody believe that we did it. Yeah, but it's a lie, and I really think that's why I think Josna found that out and was like, peace out, you guys are preaching a lie to everybody. I think we get that, like, hey, don't trust Dalinar's visions. Maybe his visions are going to say, actually, there's a desolation coming, and the church is like, no, the desolations are gone. Like, we handled this, and I think that might be a thing. But I think he's seen the desolation. What did he call it? He called it something at one point, like specifically, all caps.
Okay. Well,
but yeah,
you haven't read ahead yet to chapter 19?
Not at all.
That's going to be fun to get into on the next episode. The one comment I wanted to make, though, now that you're a little bit deeper into the book, is I feel like this series accomplishes, at least to me, what Wheel of Time accomplished, but in a much more modern way. Like, we have the world building, we have, like, I don't know, it has a lot of similarities, but to me, it is much more modern in the approach. Because Wheel of Time, I fell off of it. I thought the world building was just too excessive. There was just way too much description, like times where it was like people just talk to each other, and it would be like pages of just description, so I fell off it. But I think this series has the description, but it also has the characters. Like, it's just a modern, like, this is the modern day Wheel of Time to me. So
okay, I see what you're saying as far as the differences. Like, I do think, I don't want to get too much into my gripes with Wheel of Time, but I did feel like a lot of the time the conflict or the stuff that would happen was because someone didn't tell someone something, when they could have. And it's like, come on. And I felt that a little bit with the whole, like, this saddle's cut, but is it actually cut? It's kind of like, don't give me that. Like, give me something real and substantial. Like, hey man, the saddle's cut, because that's good enough. Because then I'm thinking the whole time, who is it cut by? But like, I will agree, the progression of the story so far has been very, I don't know, I'm vibing with it.
It's
I'm
a really huge story.
I don't think I'm far enough in to compare it yet, because, like, I mean, you've read, what is it, 5 books out right now, right? And I've only read a quarter of the first one, so
there's so much you don't know.
I can't compare it yet.
I think this next chapter, you're just gonna be like, wow, I've learned so much. Like, it's just gonna change your view of what am I reading. so it's gonna be cool.
Well, I'm excited. I'm also like, I want to know what these letters are, because like I read them and I go back.
So I won't comment on them, but apparently I should know. So don't go read the comments. But I was having a conversation with one of our faithful viewers, Darcy, and they were bringing up, they flat out were saying who they were from, and apparently I should have known this, and I was just how did I miss that? So yeah,
does that change things for you?
That's the problem, dude. Is these books are so big and so much happens that, like, going through it right now with you, it's almost like I'm experiencing the story again for the first time. So it's kind of like when you read Game of Thrones. You went back and you read it and you're like, dang, a lot happens. Like, I know the big things, but a lot of little things happen that have big implications. So it's also different because, I mean, I read the first book, Way of Kings, once I actually started reading it. I think I read it in like 3 weeks or something like that. Like, I read it quick. Sheesh. So I didn't catch as many minute details as I am going through it this slow. So
yeah, and I think that's what I enjoy about this opportunity to go through this slow, is like, I am like, oh, you know what? Let me go read back and read that character's. Just like on a normal read, I would have never caught that when Kaladin was out in Lord Amara's army, that the guy that came and fought them in Shardplate had no ornamentation. I wouldn't have like taken the time to think about that. But now, because I do have that extra time to just really dig deep, it's like I heard that and I was like, you know what? Just out of curiosity, like what was the decoration of the guy who came out? At first I thought it was going to be red, but it wasn't. And then I was like, oh shoot, like I wouldn't have picked up on that. I wouldn't have picked up on that. Like the clothes seemed to be like a big issue for whatever reason. I don't know if that'll ever come out to be anything, but it's made me like, interesting. Why is that such a big issue?
It reminds me a lot going through the book how we are with this kind of like of a book club. I've never been in a book club, but this is what I would imagine a book club is like. And I guess that's kind of the vibe that we're trying to accomplish with the channel and with this series, is almost providing that book club type of vibe of like going through section by section and really getting into the details. But on that note, I did want to mention we hit our goal of 20 subscribers. We actually surpassed it by 1. We had 21 subscribers. Nice. So new goal, we're hoping to hit 25 subscribers. That would be awesome. But we've had a couple of really faithful viewers that have been following along with us, and once again, we appreciate that a lot. We read all your comments, we discuss all your comments, and for this next episode today, we cover chapters 16 through 18. So we'll probably read the next couple with the next one. But now that we do have a couple of viewers who have been watching consistently, we'd also like to hear your feedback of like, do you like the length of the episodes? Do you have any just feedback on like the structure, the way we're approaching it? Anything would be appreciated. So
definitely.
But yeah, that's all I got for today. Do you have anything else you wanted to close out with?
Yeah. No, I'm excited you hyped up this next chapter, so I'm excited to read it. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. It's just interesting. It's going to have a lot to think about. So.
Wait. Actually, though, I do want to read this to you, and I want you to tell me if it means anything to you.
Okay.
Ati was once a kind and generous man, and you saw what became of him. Race, on the other hand, was among the most loathsome, crafty, and dangerous individuals I had ever met. Does that mean anything to you?
Possibly. I'm thinking ahead, but I may be misthinking because of how far back I read it and just how far forward it is. So, no comment that I can give to you. But yeah, that's interesting.
I'm just curious because it's like you read a book, like I think Wheel of Time has some things, or like, am I gonna ever understand what these mean while I'm reading the book, or is it gonna be, I've read all the books, now I go back and connect the dots between those things, and that's why this is on chapter 14. So I really like when these things, like Dune, I think does a great job of it, where they're not necessarily connected, but they're almost telling like a different story as you read them. So like you learn about Paul in the future, like what he's doing in his future, what he did overall, while you're reading his origin in the main story. Yeah. You know what I mean? Where it's like you don't necessarily need to read the whole book to understand what this little, reading of Princess Irulan is telling you, but it adds to it. So I'm hoping that these start meaning something to me more than just like little, interesting.
Yeah, it's going to take time. There's so much to cover. So
there is. All right, sir.
Well, thank you guys.
Thank you, everybody, for listening.
And we'll see you guys on the next episode. See ya.